There's an imposter among us, and it's Lingsha. Among the new characters in Honkai Star Rail, Lingsha has got to be the most sussy with her connection to the Sanctus Medicus, the organization that created the Stellaron crisis on the Luofu back in 1.2 and the hidden evil lurking among the Xianzhou Alliance political structure. Lingsha was initially introduced in her drip marketing as the new cauldron master of the Xianzhou Luofu's Alchemy Commission and an intelligent and quick-witted Vidyadhara healer. She has a sharp sense of smell and often uses this to diagnose illnesses, as well as utilizing incense to calm the minds of others. She is adept at dealing with complicated social relationships. Though she might be fuming inside, her expression would remain calm and serene. But what gave her away was the true identity of her master, Yuna. From lore books released in 1.2 and the Fox Garden event, Yuna was the previous chief alchemist and the cauldron master of the Xianzhou Luofu. However, for an unknown reason related to Vidyadhara politics, around 30 years ago after the Third Abundance War, Yuna was banished and was replaced by Dan Shu, the new chief alchemist and, as revealed in 1.2, the leader of the Sanctus Medicus. But the Alchemy Commission's connection to the Sanctus Medicus doesn't stop at Dan Shu, because according to Hanya's investigation, the predecessor, Yuna, was also affiliated with the Sanctus Medicus and did quite a few experiments of her own. Human experiments. In the Sanctus Medicus Devil's Criminal Evidence Records, which was compiled by Hanyu post-Stellaron event, Yuna's experiments involved the injection of Vidyadhara blood and marrow fluid into various species, including those with scales, feathers, fur, long-life volunteers already exhibiting signs of being Mara-struck, some short-life species, and Outworlder volunteers. The objective was to observe the reactions of these organisms in both their normal state and Mara-struck state. In the records, Yuna and the Sanctus Medicus injected Vidyadhara blood and marrow samples into many different subjects. Some are just fish, oxens, or birds, but some are human subjects, including both long-lifers and short-lifers on Xianzhou and Outworlders. While their reactions to the injection differed, a common occurrence among the subjects is the fact that they grow scales and horns. In effect, they were in various incomplete states of being turned into dragons, which, incidentally, is the literal meaning of
画龙妙法
transmutation arcanum in Chinese, the magical method to turn into a dragon. In short, the entire purpose of these experiments by Yuna and the Sanctus Medicus is to turn people into dragons. Now, looking back at Lingsha's design, we can see that that's exactly what happened to Lingsha. Her arms and legs grew scales and turned red. Alone, that's not saying much, but Lingsha is actually an ex-V of Yuna from Honkai Impact 3, who, in turns, was inspired by real-life stories about Yuna, the half-snake/dragon goddess of Chinese creation myth. More specifically, the design of Yuna and Lingsha both follow how Yuna was depicted in the Mwangdui Silk Banner, an ancient artifact found in the tomb of the world's best-preserved mummy, Lady
Xinzhui.
Now, Lady
Xinzhui
was a rich, noble lady, and she very much wanted to be immortal. In the robe buried alongside her, she is depicted as Yuna, in the process of transforming into a red dragon and becoming an immortal. Similarly, her coffin was absolutely covered in images of red dragon to denote how she ascended to heaven and became immortal after death. Thus, Yuna in Honkai Impact 3 being a red dragon is exactly a reference to Yuna in the Mwangdui Silk Banner, and so is Lingsha now in Honkai Star Rail. Looking at her red scales, it's impossible to not think of the experiment Yuna did to those subjects. Isn't it a funny coincidence that, like Yuna, Lingsha's master became bogged down in politics and was banished to a place far from home? Yeah, they're the same person. And the final nail on the coffin is the fact that the meaning of both her names,
Lingsha
and
Danzhu,
de cinnabar, a chemical traditionally associated with immortality and Taoist immortality pills. And yes, that's the same Dan as in Dan Shu and Dan Heng. But what happened to Yuna in the end? Well, she died. The Xianzhou cast doesn't know it yet, but we as the audience have already met Yuna in person. Well, not in person, but in memory. During the Dan Heng in Behederlini quest, During the Scale Gorge tour that Dan Heng and Bailu took, they actually already ran into the memories of the Yunhua as preserved by the ancient sea. The kind woman voice that recognized both Dan Heng and Bailu and proclaimed that Bailu was the key to her research. In effect, during her exile, she died under mysterious circumstances off the record, and then someone brought her egg back to the Luofu, which led to the creation of the Yunhua mirage we saw in the quest. Note here that the English translation here was a bit funky. In the original Chinese text, Yunhua actually said that she finally understood Dan Feng's efforts, not that it was his plan, so Bailu's part isn't connected to Dan Feng's sedition event directly. Just that she was inspired by him, and that Bailu was the key to her search on the transmutation arcanum. This was later confirmed by Dan Shu in the Undestroyed Letters, where Bailu was revealed to be the Bloomborn Scion, the miraculous experiment created around 30 years ago by the Sanctus Medicus, probably Yunhua, with the way she recognized and doted on Bailu as a mirage. The creation of Bailu to substitute for the broken line of succession due to Dan Feng being jailed has actually been a long-term project for the Sanctus Medicus and the Preceptors, with this particular egg right here telling us of the Preceptors sneaking a branch of the Arbor into the Alchemy Commission, presumably for the Bloomborn Scion project, while laughing maniacally. Very long story on that one, I'll be saving that part for another video. But that's not all that the Sanctus Medicus has planned for the Xianzhou Alliance. For one, the Sanctus Medicus roots run deep, spanning many ships in the Alliance across thousands of years, not just 30 years, contrary to what the Luofu proclaimed in the official announcement. For another, in Dan Shu's Undestroyed Notes, she proclaimed that breaking the prisoners out of the shackling prison is a future plan of hers, because she thinks the prisoners can be used to cause chaos. Now, with the Luofu hot on the Preceptor's case for the Stellaron event, and with Lingsha being an obvious Sanctus Medicus plant all along, I wonder who on earth is causing the prison break in the next patch. By the way, I called this way back on the 17th of July LOL, the moment Lingsha drip marketing dropped.